Well, here we are. Onward we go into the final arc of Season 2 of My Hero Academia. And we are so close to being outright done with this show until next year. Still feels like just yesterday we started this second journey together, but here we are now, coming towards the tail end of it. So, if you just joined in now, or if you've been watching since I started covering MHA, thank you, because none of this would be possible without your support. Okay, sentimental, sappy shenanigans are out of the way. Let's get to the actual episode you've come to hear me talk about now. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station, your message for anything and everything animation, including TV and movies and pro heroes fighting for the fate of the world, as well as TV, as well as etc., etc. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Welcome back to Academia April 2, Season 2, Episode 22, or Episode 35. Yaoyorozu Rising, the next episode of the final exams arc of My Hero Academia Season 2. And this is a pretty hefty episode. A lot happens in it. This arc started out really slow with an episode that was mainly just a lot of exposition, but now we're getting into the actual exams, and this episode's great. I'm just gonna say that right now. This one is legit great. In fact, I'd say pretty much all the other actual episodes surrounding the final exams are great. So, we're ending on a high note this year, which is really nice to see. So, without further ado, let's dive into this episode bit by bit, starting, of course, with where we left off with Tokoyami and Asui versus Ectoplasm. And this battle is pretty cool. You have Ectoplasm making a dozen clones of himself, and you have Tokoyami and Asui working together to get around all these clones. And then he ends up creating this giant clone that attacks and immobilizes the students. But then that's when Dark Shadow keeps attacking the real Ectoplasm that's sitting right by the escape gate, and Asui comes up with the genius idea of throwing up the handcuffs that she had earlier. Yeah, she ate them earlier. I guess strategy, but honestly kind of gross. But she's a frog, so I get it. And they actually managed to get it around his leg, securing the win. And even Ectoplasm himself is pretty impressed with their efforts. So, yeah, it was a pretty great little battle. It was short because, obviously, it's the beginning of the episode. But it was pretty entertaining. Not to mention seeing these two different characters work together. Awesome. Really, really cool. Really enjoyed that. So, next up is Ida and Ojiro versus Power Loader. And this is another pretty interesting one where Tenya has himself boosting across the ground with Ojiro on his back. But then he comes up with the idea of getting Ojiro to wrap around his leg and then throws him full force at the escape gate, while he himself takes the hit. So, yeah, quick, but it does show that Ida is growing a bit from his interaction with Stain. And then I think that's it for the extra ones. Yes it is, because now it's time to get to the main course of this episode. With Yaoyorozu and Todoroki, the two characters that were suggested off of recommendations to the Class 1A, are paired together against Eraserhead. Yeah, they're paired up against their homeroom teacher. And at first, it's mainly a lot of talking, with Todoroki putting together a plan for her to keep making these little objects, that way they know when Eraserhead's actually near. But, of course, she herself had her own plan, but she has self-confidence issues, which we find out pretty soon in this part of the episode, when Eraserhead drops down on the two of them like he's Spider-Man. That pose, come on. You know they had to throw in a Spider-Man reference. And then he actually ends up managing to, I think temporarily incapacitate Todoroki? Yeah, he ends up getting captured by Aizawa and telling Momo to just run. And then she herself ponders whether she's making the right choices or not, and she pretty much has a mental nervous breakdown, showing that even though she's a rich girl, even though she is top of her class, she is not perfect. She has issues with her confidence. And yeah, it's pretty cool, to say the least. Like, I already kind of liked Yaoyorozu up to this point, but I could tell she was a very cliche character. But this is the one that opened my eyes a bit when I first saw it, because it's just like, oh, okay, so this rich girl who's top of her class actually has flaws. Like, it's not one of those scenarios where you have that one character who's spoiled rich and has no flaws whatsoever and thinks they are the best at everything. You know, like Chloe from Miraculous. But no, Momo's an actual well-developed, interesting character, and this is the one that actually made me like her. So, yeah, props to this episode for that. So then Yaoyorozu realizes how disgraceful she's been acting, especially considering how she was voted as the class president, and the one that was actually voted for her, the one that voted for her, was Todoroki. So that's how she got the deputy role aside Ida, because Shoto gave her, I can't talk today. Shoto gave her his votes. And then they spring a pretty cool plan where she makes the same scarf that Aizawa wears around his neck using her creative quirk. Then she puts it in a catapult, hides it under one of those metal alloy blankets we saw in a later episode. Well, an earlier episode, sorry. Reggie, be quiet. Sorry, my pigs are noisy and all kinds of crap today. And then she ends up missing the trap, but then Eraserhead decides to let her win, jumps back, and gives her a second chance to launch the catapult. Then Shoto uses his fire. I can't talk today. Some bitch. Uses his fire to harden the alloy that she made that wraps around Aizawa and captures him. Pretty much signaling that they have won their trial. Sorry about that. That was a mouthful and I kept getting sidelined by a bunch of other crap. Sorry. Then we get to the fifth match, which we'll get a little bit more of in the next episode, because this is the cliffhanger, where Ochako and Ioma are close to the escape gate, but 13 has them caught in her black hole. That's what the quirk's called, Do Not Call Me Verve. They hold onto a railing to avoid being sucked up, but 13 continues to get closer. Ioma tried to counterattack using his costume's ability to transmit his laser, but she sucks that up too, like nothing. So then Uraraka tries to come up with a plan, but Ioma notices that and questions whether she's trying to think what Midoriya would do. And then he asks if she likes him. Yes, this is where my shipping for Deku and Ochako came from, because up to this point I thought they were just friends, but when he said that, I'm like, oh, they're hinting at something else here. So, yep, that's how the episode ends. But it's a pretty great episode. It's the one that made me like Yaoyorozu as a character, and it does have some pretty interesting battles to go along with it. So, final thoughts before I end up becoming a stuttering mess even more than I already am. Let's go. Whereas the previous episode was too slow, this one immediately fixed it and simultaneously gave significant development to one of the coolest side characters in the show. Then the additional battles that preceded it were just icing on top of the cake, especially Tokoyami and Asui versus Ectoplasm, which was an absolutely fantastic battle that I wish was just a little longer. This was the episode that made me a fan of Momo Yaoyorozu as a character, by showing that she's just as flawed as anyone else, but also seeing how she overcame that to become a much more confident hero. Nothing else to say. This episode's excellent. Final verdict, 9 out of 10. Really liked it, really enjoyed it. Check it out. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time when Mini Goku shuts up. Sorry, Daima clips are in my Facebook page. And I'll see you guys next time for the next episode, Stripping the Varnish.
Excited for what comes up ahead. Hey, Shenron.